Now let's go into verses 5 and 6 of Exodus 2. It says this: Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river while her young woman walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Now, Pharaoh's daughter sees the basket floating in the river. And when she sees the basket, she sends her servant girl out to get the basket. Now, when her servant girl brings the basket in, what she sees, looks in, and immediately God gives her compassion. All right? God is in total control. He gives her compassion. This is Pharaoh's daughter. This is, her dad has just issued an edict to kill all the babies not long ago. And rather than, falling, she's got compassion. And when she immediately recognizes that this, it says, is a Hebrew baby. Now, how did she immediately recognize that? These people have been in Egypt for years. Here's the reason. Here's how she recognized. Number one, she knew her dad's edict. If a baby's in a river, it's got to be because it's a Hebrew, because my dad has said for all the Hebrew babies to be thrown into the river. So she knew that. There's a second reason that I think. Now, the text doesn't say this. Anytime the text doesn't say something, and I'm going to inject something, I'm going to tell you that this is speculation, but I think it's good speculation, that she knew that he wasn't a Hebrew, or wasn't an Egyptian, but that he was a Hebrew because he was circumcised. Now, Hebrew babies, boys, were circumcised a few days after birth. Egyptians were circumcised at puberty. Ouch, boy, you glad you're not an Egyptian, right? At that day. I mean, when I grew up in the 80s and the Bengals sang that song, "Walk Like an Egyptian," that'd make you walk like an Egyptian. That's where it come from right there. So, gosh, I don't know why I get into all that stuff. It just comes to me. So, anyway, Hebrew boys were circumcised a few days after birth as a sign of the covenant promises, and also as a badge saying, "I belong to God." And so listen, here's what you need to know. In that day, in that moment, God had commanded all Hebrew boys to be circumcised. In that moment, circumcising your boy, if you were going to hide him, was a death warrant. I mean, that's just like holding a sign up, right? I'm a Hebrew boy, and here I am. Moses' mom and dad, here's the point I want to make. Moses' mom and dad, oh man, would it have not been absolutely in our minds easy for them to go, God will understand in this one circumstance right here. God will understand if we don't do what he said to do, because of we're going to play situational ethics or situational spirituality. We're going to obey when we think, well, man, listen, I promise you, don't ever think you can outthink God. And if he tells us to do something, don't ever think there's an exception to the rule. Many people always think they're the exception to the rule. God doesn't care if I have sex with my boyfriend. We're 30-year-old, we're 40-year-old. We love each other. We're committed to each other. We live together. Don't ever think you're the exception to the rule, because you're not. Always be willing to obey God no matter what it costs you. That's why you have to have faith, because you fight fear with faith. If not, you're going to play situational spirituality. God will understand. God will understand. No, God has obeyed, and when God has obeyed, or God has commanded, and when God has commanded, we obey. So, it's filled with irony here. Pharaoh's daughter, the daughter of Pharaoh, saves a boy out of the river, of which he told the Egyptians to throw baby boys into the river. She saves a boy from the river who will grow up and redeem his people from her daddy's oppression. Isn't that ironic? I mean, it's just like all over the story. You're like, God's going, is that all you got? I mean, this is so awesome to see how God moves here.